Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie, and we are here to preview and build up our round one clash against Richmond. It's been a bit of a turbulent preseason. I'm not sure I've actually had my mood as a fan fluctuate as much as it has heading into a season, but here we are, less than a week away from our first game for 2025. We've got a lot to cover. We're going through our expectations of the Richmond game, team selection. The footy media are apparently writing us off, which is a bit strange, and we'll even be debuting a new segment where throughout the season, we'll be bringing it out to debate the biggest topics needing an all perspectives, no bias discussion. But before we get stuck into all of that, Lockie, mate, how are you? And where do the excitement levels sit with you right now heading into round one?
Extremely excited, mate. The sun is finally out here in London, which means that footy is back. Good to get a little taste of it this weekend with a couple of games, which we've both watched very closely. And yeah, Carlton's just around the corner. Couldn't be more keen.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in and talk about this game because it's so strange. I said fluctuation earlier, but the fluctuation between Carlton and Richmond since we've started the round one tradition. Initially, Carlton were superstars. Richmond were horrific. It was 100-point wins to us every single week. Tides turned. Richmond went through a bit of a dynasty there. We didn't look good for a while. Now it's turning back into our favor. And I think we all expect a win from this game. And a lot of the talk has been around us making a big statement with Richmond not being a great team right now, expected to finish bottom or bottom two. Do we need to make a statement to start the season, Lockie? People are saying 10-goal win, 100-point win. Is that what you need from this game to be happy, or is simply just getting that dub enough?
You might be surprised at my perspective on this. I'm not sure if this is follows the general pattern that I have on the podcast. I think we do need to have a big win in this game to feel happy. I don't think I'd be satisfied with... I'm not trying to put a specific number on it, but it's got to be something that's really convincing. I don't want this to be a competitive performance for lots of reasons, which we can go into. But what about you?
Yeah, I love that from you early because I think often in these types and times of the year when we have these discussions, it is pretty black and white. Just get the win. Don't worry about it. But I agree with you as well here. Now, I'm not sure it needs to be 100 points, 10 goals. I'm like you. I'm not putting a number on what the margin is. I'm more on the actual performance itself and how clear and obvious it is that we have won this game. If we take our foot off the pedal in the third quarter after being up by 70 points and it's only 30, I'm not going to be that upset as long as we make the statement of we're not messing around this season. Here's the performance. Game's done in the first quarter. Richmond aren't in it. Here you go. Let's get ready for the season. Because I think you look back at last year when a lot of us expected the tide was turning, Carlton are going to run over the top here. It was only 5 points in the end. It was very nerve-wracking in those final moments. The ball absolutely pinballing around in Richmond's front half. That can't happen again. Looking at the statement, is it just about the performance for you? How are you kind of seeing that statement? What is that for you in your head?
Yeah, I think you've touched on a lot of the points that I've been thinking about. Thinking about last year, after the Richmond game, we were, I think, still pretty perplexed about where we were in the grand scheme. Like we had opening round, which was the definition of tale of two halves. So we were like, are we good? Are we not? We felt really good going into that Richmond game. And for it to be that competitive, I remember that felt disappointing. And then as I was kind of preparing for this and reflecting on the entire year, and you see how Richmond kind of went last year, it just, I don't know. Was it a foreshadowing maybe of different things that were to come for last year? I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm not here saying that if we don't have that performance, it changes the grand scheme of this season. Like, write us off if we only win by 2 goals or if we lose or anything like that. But I think even where Richmond were last year to this year, like they are looking to be a historically bad team with the players that have gone out of their team and that kind of thing. So there really is no excuses for me, for us.
And I think we've been quite inconsistent, clearly, in the last couple of years. Our best has been amazing. Our bad has been really bad. And even going into this year, I feel like some are optimistic, some are pessimistic. There's a weird divide and maybe anxiousness in Carlton supporters at the moment on what they need to feel about this team, which was clear in the preseason. One game against the Saints, one game against GWS, and just the ride of emotions even that had amongst the fans, even though we know it's only preseason. You can't read too much into the actual results of these things, but we want to believe that Carlton is the team we think they are, which was top 2 for a lot of the season last year in a massive vein of form, fighting for top 4, contending for the premiership with this group. And I think we need those performances, particularly early in the year, just to get the nerves out of the way and build that confidence, not only for us fans, but for the team out there. If they go out there, wipe the floor with Richmond, I guess like we saw, I don't know, again, preseason, but like we saw Collingwood do it easily in a preseason game, that's the kind of thing you want to see from us. And then we go, beautiful, round 1 out the way. We're coming up against the Hawks, who are looking pretty good. You just need that little bit of momentum to start the season. Last year, we had a good run as far as wins were concerned. We went 4 or 5-0, but the performances weren't looking amazing. And I think some were saying, okay, are they pretenders sitting there with that kind of record? I don't want to have that this year if we start winning these games early. I want the performances to reflect the win column.
I completely agree. We get one opportunity this year to play Richmond, which is unusual for us to only get them once. So this is our one chance to do it. I mean, I was looking for a number of different data points to kind of like try and make this point about them. But looking at Richmond in 2024, goal kickers, like this just blew my mind. So Bolton kicked their most. He's gone.
Yeah.
Mansell kicked 21. He was their second most.
Wow.
Ryan Mansell. Baker, third, gone. Lafau, I'm pretty sure he's still injured. Kashitsky then kicked 12. Noah Bolter, suspended. Dusty's retired. And then you're into single-digit goal kickers.
It's bleak.
Like,
it's a bleak outlook for Tigers fans at the moment.
This is what we're going up against. And, you know, all they've brought in is rookies. There's just no way. I just don't know what the justification could be for this to be a competitive game, which is why I'd be really disappointed if it is.
Well, you might have just answered my next question, but I'll throw it out there anyway, which is obviously all the talk is, it's not really about will Carlton get the win, it's by how much. That is the rhetoric going into this one. Is that a fair way to look at it? Or are we underestimating Richmond? Is it disrespectful just to be saying, we've already won the game, we just need to make the statement, how much is the margin? Or should we be simply just worried about getting the 4 points, or should we be considering them this way?
I don't find it to be disrespectful. I think if I think back to when we were in Richmond's position 7 years ago, you know, if the top teams are saying that this is more just about how much we beat Carlton by, not if we just beat them, I think I would be thinking fair play. Like we've talked about this a number of times. I remember walking to the MCG in 2018 to matches being like, I really think that we're a chance to lose by less than 30 today. Like
maybe we can get within 15 points. Like we'll get close by 3/4 time. Genuinely. And then Richmond will probably just run over the top. But if we can get there just to be competitive going into that last quarter, how sad were those times, Lockie? Don't bring me back to those.
I know. Well, that's why it's nice to reflect on that to see where we are now. But that's a real feeling that I had as a Carlton fan for a lot of my life. So I don't think it is just disrespectful. Richmond supporters know that they're in a rebuild. They've brought in a bunch of exciting talent, but they just shouldn't be able to beat a team like us who should be contending.
No, I totally agree. And I think looking into this game, they're going to be very up and about, excited, because they haven't had these massive losses yet that everyone in the football community is expecting them to have, given what their list is right now. So this is the highest energy you're probably going to get of Richmond all season. the most optimistic. We can spoil Carlton's start to the season. This is the big one, like we used to think many years ago. So we just need to squash that out early. I think really in that first quarter, if we can put on the first few goals here, really just take that out, then we're not going to give them the opportunity to ride in the second quarter, maybe get to the third quarter before we kick away. It needs to be shut down from the start. Show them that we mean business. We are just that class above you guys now. And I'm hoping that's the way the game goes.
Yeah. Yep, spot on. God, just talking about this is making me so excited. I wish it was Thursday already.
Absolutely. But apart from the win, Lockie, this is what we used to do on some of these build-up shows. If you take away just the victory, what else do you want to see from this game?
I think often in like round one and these early rounds, it's still about validating things that you saw in the preseason. So I guess Silvani and Kemp are kind of top of that category. I'll put them out there. Like, I'm excited to see how they perform. And I guess what I want to see is, them looking really solid in their roles. Silvani taking some intercept marking, being a dominant force down back. And then Kemp doing the same thing, flying for marks, giving space between himself and Harry, like not flying in the same contests, putting some goals on the board.
No, I love all of that. You've almost rattled off the key words I had written down, which I love as normal. No, I mean, I had like cohesion with that back four, something we spoke about heavy in the preseason. We saw it work really well against GWS. Want to see it work again. And then on top of that, I want to see this improved movement, particularly from turnover when we get these intercepts. How are we transitioning the ball? And is there a clearer route to goal that we have? I feel like sometimes we get very focused on it's win the contest and then quick bomb kick into the forward line. Let's hope Harry and Charlie can take it. I want to see a very new, invigorated Carlton where when we win the ball, it's a clear, systematic way that we move the ball and play football. I think with the way this backline is shaping out and the pieces that we've kind of moved around, the way we saw that forward line work against GWS, feels like we're moving into the right direction. So I am excited to just see how that goes again and use the word space. I just want to see space inside 50. I don't want the whole thing to be cluttered like we saw a lot last year. I just want some dynamic movement just across the board.
Yeah, I thought that was quite evident in the couple of victories this weekend, like with Hawthorn and the Giants, and how they were able to do that. So I definitely hope we can replicate parts of that. Also on my list, obviously we know that Haynes and Campo are going to be debuting for us. So they're top of my list as well.
Yeah, and the last one I had was we got a bit of a taste of this in the St Kilda practice match. Not as much in the GWS game. Now, I went with a very big bold prediction again this year of wanting just about all our small forwards to kick all the possible goals that you could kick in an AFL season. So I want Jesse Motlop to get me excited. I'm not putting a number on this. I'm not saying he has to kick 4 goals, but I want from this game in particular, the small forwards, emphasis on Jesse Motlop here, to show me something that I go, bang, we're not going to have to worry about the small forwards in 2025. I just can't wait to see him out there. Be that X factor in the forward line.
That's bold. Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one. I could list almost every player in this game as someone that I'm excited about an aspect of them. So it's good.
Yeah, so I guess you might have said one of those already, but if you were to nail it down to one thing that you were looking forward to the most from our first game of the season, what would it be, Lockie? And those watching here on YouTube, drop yours in the comments down below. And if you're listening in audio form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner. What are you looking forward to the most? And do we need a statement win? Any question that we throw out amongst each other, feel free to answer them in the comments. But Lockie, what are you looking forward to?
It really is what we just kind of started this segment with, I think. I want to see a display where it, like the eye test. Like, I just want us to look a step above. I want us to look like a contender from round one. And like I said, I know that doesn't necessarily need to translate. We saw Brisbane last year, not a great start to the season. Hawthorn, awful start to the season,
Yeah.
and they ended up as two of the strongest clubs. So it's not writing us off if we don't have that strong start. But if we're sitting here next week wrapping up an unconvincing performance, it's just not the energy that I want the Navy Blue Corner to have coming into this season.
No, I think that's the perfect thing to look forward to from this game. But there is some negativity out there at the moment, Lockie. I don't know how much you've been across the wider footy media that has gone around. I've tried my hardest to avoid it, but still,
Me too.
I keep seeing a lot. And that seems to be, for anyone unaware, that the AFL media is basically writing us off in 2025. All the big pundits, all the journos, everyone that's got their ladder predictor out, the big clickbaity thing this year seems to be Carlton's not making the top 8. Just don't see it for them. And there's been some wild takes on that. I mean, some of the things David King was saying, I was like, do you watch Carlton games? Evidently not. But
me too.
Now that we're going to debut basically a segment, the Blue debate around this topic, around the positive and the negative side of Carlton this year. But before we delve into all that, argue our sides, maybe get a bit of perspective of Carlton's outlook in 2025. I wanted to ask, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing that the wider footy community are writing us off? Most years, it's the hype train. Carlton are contenders. They're winning the flag. All the talk and chatter is about us. This feels like the first time in a long time, while we're still evidently good, it's not as if we're going to be bottom 4 at the moment, that we aren't getting this hype. So there's low expectations on Carlton in 2025. Is this good?
I'm going to say it's neutral. How boring is that?
That's I can't have the first main episode of 2025 be a fence sit from you, Lockie.
Yeah, I don't want to think that, I guess, that the players get invested in what some of those comments are. Like you mentioned David King. Like, I thought the same thing listening to those comments. It was like, this is why people want to listen to creators that focus on a specific team or on a specific part of the game. Because when I didn't expect to go on this rant, by the way, but here we are. When you're these full generalists that cover everything, you just can't have the knowledge that people do that, specialize. So when they make comments about certain players and their positions and their output and those kind of things, it's like, you don't watch Carlton. So I can't take your opinion as that valid.
Oh, I'm glad I got you absolutely fired up. And I wish I wrote down everything from David King, because I wanted to almost go through it, because one I do remember, he was talking about our defense being flaky, like talking specifically about the back six being
made of straw?
a problem.
The quote?
Yeah, which is, I think if you ask anyone that watches Carlton, you'd say, no, it's not the players in the back 6 or 7 that the problem. It was the way the whole team defended, the front half, the midfield stopped, like the amount of defensive 50 stoppage goals that we conceded. That's not necessarily the back 6's problem. And then he was going through the individual plays. He said, Saad's not a good one-on-one defender. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about, because I think every time he's one-on-one, he seems to win every single contest. Even if he's 50 meters away, he'll find a way to get that spoil across. He also said Mitch McGovern is never healthy. 18 games last year, 22 games season before.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
as well.
He's been patchy before that. But if you watched a game since 2022, like, when did are you paying attention to what's going on? So, look, I think overall, Lockie, it's a good thing that they're not hyping us up. It's a change. So I'm all about seeing how things go with that this season. But I don't believe the players will buy into it or anything like that. More just as a narrative. When they hype you up, it's so much easier for them to create these really negative narratives when you don't live up to those expectations. When there's no expectations for you, hopefully we can just kind of go about our thing, and there isn't this ridiculous chatter and all these weird narratives that get peddled. I'm hoping it's a good thing for us this season. I know our expectations are still high. We still believe that we'll make that top 8 and hopefully contend this season. But at the end of the day, I'm not too fussed what those outside of you or me in the Carlton community really think about how we're going to go.
Totally. It's the nature of, like, predictions and preseason content, which we do every year. We make our wild predictions. Do we hold ourselves accountable to them? Yes, a little bit. At the end of the season, we try to hold ourselves accountable, but you can say anything in the preseason.
Yeah.
And also, like, I don't know, I understand why people would feel this way. Like, they have the recency bias. They watched the elimination final. They watched Jagger and Newey go down. And you look at the ladder from last year, and it is crazy to say that Geelong had 15 wins in third and Melbourne had 11 in 14th. So 4 wins separating third and 14th. Yeah, you can kind of throw a blanket over a whole bunch of teams and just pick and just have a guess who you think will drop out or who will go in. And there's a chance that you'll be right. So, and then Carlton is one of the biggest clubs. Yeah, you're gonna get traction if you bag us, just as you would if you say that Collingwood's going to drop, or if you say that Essendon is going to be bottom 4, as your friend did.
Absolutely. Look, I love this, and this is why we're debuting this segment, Lockie. The blue debate. Now, the debate we're going to have this week is the optimism versus pessimism. You're going to be the shining light, as you always are. I'm going to bring the negative side of this for Carlton's sort of fan outlook for 2025. Now, neither of us know what points we're going to be arguing. We're going to
I'm scared.
Bring 3 forward. Lockie will say he has the floor, and then we'll discuss it. We'll break it down. Maybe take our own biases away. We don't actually have to be butting heads and saying, no, I'm on the opposition, so I can't agree with your point. We're actually going to have this proper discussion. But we like the idea of this segment to, I guess, when we are able to bring both sides of this argument to the floor, there is that bias away from it. We can show maybe things that we disagree with and then have that proper discussion. So, Lockie, take it away on why you have this optimistic outlook for Carlton in 2025, and we'll see what conclusions we can draw.
All right. All right. I'm nervous for this.
Mate, if this goes horribly wrong, this will never be on the channel again. So, it's up to you to nail this.
Or people will have heard that intro and then straight into, all right, let's look at the team against Richmond.
There's this debate they kept hyping up.
Okay, so I've got 3 different points. So we'll start with my first one. So I mentioned, this is what this is going to be like, isn't it?
I'll shut up. I'll shut up.
Opposition. No. No, it's good. I want to be challenged on these. So I mentioned that recency bias about the elimination final. And I think, so let's just take ourselves back. Round 16 last year, that was deep into the season. We were 11-4. And I remember at that time, there was nothing about that felt unsustainable. I went and had a bit of a listen to the Geelong and Richmond episodes, at least the start of them. And a quote from you was, and this just brought a tear to the eye, we're finally that side that we've dreamed of becoming. And so I think from there, I think we're underestimating how those injuries ripped through the spine. So as a reminder, that St Kilda game, the guys that weren't available, Charlie and Harry, TDK, Gov, all important players in the spine, Chera, Williams, Fogarty, Cottrell, Boyd, Martin, Marchbank, Silvani, Doherty. These are all the players that weren't available throughout that stretch at the end of the season. And the crazy thing about that St Kilda game, McGovern was injured and it was listed as the emergency. That's how few players we had available. It was Lemmy, Wilson, and then Gov, who could not play, as an emergency. So I guess the contention that I have for this first point is that I think we're letting that end to the season dictate too much about how we're judging this path forward, because we felt like everything was so real when we were second, and I still look back on it and feel like it was real. So I want to treat that end as an outlier, and so yeah, the base of where we are is a lot higher than I think people are feeling.
No, look, I think those are really good points. I'm not going to just absolutely shit on it. I think.
No, go on.
I think the injuries have been a whole topic of conversation that people who already have kind of made up their mind on what perspective they want to have on it immediately will say, okay, you can't use injuries as an excuse. I think I heard a bit of Sam McClure say, if Carlton keep saying that injuries were the reason their season was derailed, like he's going to throw up because he's just sick of hearing it. And I was kind of like, elaborate. Why can they not use that as an excuse? Like, let's have the conversation around it. He didn't, which kind of annoys me on that when they have these big takes, because I agree with you. I think we probably underestimate how much of an effect that has. Yes, I think our downturn started to happen before that. Think that GWS game where quarter time we're winning the flag. All of a sudden it goes haywire, and then there's a couple of niggles, but it still, like the Doggies game and other things like that stand out to me where the performance wasn't there. But when these injuries start to hit throughout this period, something that I've started to think about is if you're having a bad bit of form, what would you probably do to try and correct that? Would it be let's go to training and let's try and sort these things out? Well, how can you do that if there's no one on the training park? And I've heard rumors of there being maybe 10 players that could actually participate in training during some of these weeks because we were managing guys. Some guys were completely out. We were just trying to get a squad together for the weekend. When you do have this downturn of form, how can you get better if you can't actually address it and train it on the pitch? So I think it is a good point to have there, and something that it is recency bias why we're very anxious on the back end, from the back end of the season to now. That's the last thing we saw. It's hard to know what the true Carlton is. You brought out that quote. I remember another one that I said, which was along the lines of, I finally trust this team. I know we're going to have a run where we lose 2, maybe 3 in a row, but I back us in to turn it around, and I have that faith. Back end of the season, I think I've lost that, and I've lost it now. I don't have that true belief. Does that say more about me or more about them? How are you seeing all those, the injury perspective?
I'm in agreement with a lot of that. I'm just trying to not, like, there's a narrative that I feel like we're all kind of agreeing with, which is that Giants game was like a turning point. I don't want to necessarily buy into that, even though I kind of have bought into that. Yeah. Which is that was our 5th loss of the season in round 17. Like, I don't think we need to treat that as like there was something in that moment where we got too cocky and we thought we'd won the flag. I'm not buying into that either. Like, I think that we could have just treated that as that was a loss against one of the best 4 teams at the end of the season, who we'd already beaten previously in the season. So you'd be happy having 1-1. And then all the carnage started to happen. So I guess, this whole point is not so much really focused about the injuries. It's more just about, like, just think about how well we were going last year before whatever happened at the end of the season happened. Just remember how good we were last year. And who's to say that we can't get back to that level? We're not a team where we've lost 5 of our best, most important players. So there's just nothing to me that says that we can't go back to how we were feeling after we beat Richmond by 60 points. We beat Geelong by 50 points. Why can't we go back to that next week? Yeah,
no, I absolutely love it. They've shown they can be that team, so why not? However, I've got to argue the pessimistic side. So my first point, and these are very harsh, so strap in. My first reason why there's maybe a reason to be pessimistic about the season is still got concerns about our game plan, our systems, what we're doing, Lockie. And I think a lot of that comes down to this potential over-reliance on winning the contest and applying that elite pressure. Our game plan under Voss has been pressure contest, and those two things are very important, don't get me wrong, but it seems like the rest of the comp has kind of evolved past that. Styles at the moment, particularly from a few games we've been able to see in 2025, it's speed on the ball, all about ball movement, transition, how you get that ball going. And while I think at times we have shown that we can move the ball fast, we can be really direct. If you look at some of the stats, we're incredibly efficient from low inside 50s. I think we ranked 9th for inside 50s last year, but we're one of the most efficient teams there. So clearly we can move it fast, we can be direct. The issue for me with our fast ball movement feels more like it's win clearance burst inside 50.
Yep.
We have been able to improve that that, I guess, that turnover game a little bit, but I still think it's individual brilliance when a lot of it goes right. It's this quick kick. All of a sudden, it's Harry and Charlie taking mark of the year. It doesn't feel controlled and repeatable like I think it needs to. And we've seen that, I think, when we're down as well on stoppages and the contest game starts to struggle, we do struggle to wrestle that momentum back in games. I think particularly in that Port Adelaide game, I think it was last season, where we were dominating. We had all the contested balls. As soon as we started to lose that, we just couldn't find a way to get back into this game, to get control. And I think teams know that, and they know that all you kind of have to do is win that contested ball, play a bit of keepings off, and we will not be able to wrestle that ball back because we need stoppages to gain that momentum. And I think our pressure as well, when that drops off, we can't go. And I think that can be the case for every team. You can make that argument. But when I'm looking at how we play, I think we're too reliant on needing to be at that elite pressure for 4 quarters for it all to work. And when that pressure drops off, that's when your system, that's when everything you know is meant to withhold the damage, hold the fort until you can bring that back. I don't think we've currently shown that we've got the system that can do that. Now going to ball movement wise, the best teams at the moment, they're elite with disposal by hand or by foot. I worry that just isn't us. We're a bit more of an industrious team, the hard workers. We're not the silky movers, you know, GWS that'll carve you through by hand. Brisbane, who's, work rate, short lateral kicks will find a way to work through you. Feels like most teams are adopting those kind of game styles. Control, move the ball fast, but with the control of you win the ball, you know where you're going. And if they're all adopting that and we're still a little bit focused on the contest, that kind of worries me a little bit. Every team seems to be bringing in these fast, dynamic players in their midfield or periphery. We haven't necessarily done that. So there is a chance, I think, that we have evolved and we will evolve this season. But at the moment, I see that as our glaring issue we need to overcome because our disposal is poor. We lack the dynamic edge. Front half game and setup probably isn't to scratch. And that goes back to just that. We win the ball. You watch it and you don't think we've got this clear plan. Sometimes it feels very on the go. Let's figure out what we're doing with it. Just to end that point, it really seems like the competition's moving in one direction, whereas our game plan is almost off in the distance by ourselves. No one's really doing what we're doing. And that's a reason why I think we maybe won't be as good this year.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And your examples were, I definitely felt them this weekend. Like watching the Giants Pies game, for example, and even when it was like kind of competitive early in the game, I was already feeling like the way that Collingwood are moving the ball feels really like it doesn't feel system driven in a way. Like it felt very unreplicable when things were going well. It was big marks on the wing. It was whatever, whereas the Giants were doing what you described, which was eight quick handballs of bursting forward into space. I think if I was going to rebut one part of that, and you're much more in tune with the game plan and the strategy side of things than I am. But I think just because, like, if we forget about what the actual game plans are and just say that if most teams are moving in one direction and we're doing something different, I don't think that's inherently bad. Because I don't think we necessarily just want to play the way that everybody else does in a theoretical sense. If we all agree that the contested, pressure way is objectively worse than that other game plan, then we've got a problem. But I haven't necessarily made my mind up on that part.
Yeah, look, it's a good point. I think there's degrees to it because eventually a team comes along, plays a different way, everyone follows that. So maybe our balance of the two worlds of having these key forwards, of having these big balls in the midfield, once we figure out what that balance is, everyone will go, oh, actually to win, we need this. I think at the moment, the vogue in trend thing is small, quick, fast move. So how does that go for us? It feels like we're moving more towards that. I guess my biggest worry overall is probably just that skill component of it, where if that's how the game's being played, then to a degree, we're going to have to be a fast movement team, regardless of how we want to go about it. Or if we want to go slow, we're going to have to be even better at disposing it. I don't think we've got that currently. So how can we get better at this if right now where we stand, like I could list every single player on the list and you tell me if you have faith that they can nail a kick if they need to.
Totally.
I can't imagine many of them you're going to say, I believe they can. But I'm sure as coaches, you can manufacture a way to get the best out of your team and make it work. I think something you sort of mentioned with like GWS and how they move the ball today, the one thing I think I'd love to see when we're making those quick dashes is just have more players around the ball carrier. And I don't know why we don't seem to have this when we win the ball. It feels very, I don't know what to do with it. I'll kick it long. I'll get it to one of our key forwards and hope someone can take a mark. Instead, when we win the ball, there needs to be, I know exactly where I need to be, supporting cast, running wide, being those almost like rugby passes back as we go throughout. You've got the options to pierce through the defense. Again, it can happen. We can figure it out. But I think until I see us truly finding ways to be that ball movement team where I really trust how we play, and it's not so reliant on we win the clearances like in that preseason game against GWS. I want to see other elements, but maybe that's the back line. Maybe it's those four tools that the way we're able to set up now defensively will allow us to launch. And that was the missing piece. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Your point around like which players you trust to hit those targets is definitely well made. Like, again, I know we're talking a lot about this game, but there was like 5 times in this game today where I watched Whitfield do something and I'm like, who's the player that does that? Like every time he takes a kick out, it's like it's almost always a positive outcome. Whereas for us, when we take kick outs, it feels like it's neutral or bad almost each time. Like, so, and that's a ball use thing, I think. So yeah, all valid.
Yeah. So what is your point number 2 on why we need to be optimistic about the season?
Okay. Well, I know this is a topic close to your heart. The list, the players.
Yes.
So I want to have a little bit of a chat around natural progression and the role changes that we're seeing versus like declining players. Like I've been very bearish on Collingwood this season for a lot of reasons, and that kind of decline that we're expecting to see with a lot of their players is part of that. So you spent the first few seasons of this podcast. We did a lot of this was when we were in the rebuild, and I remember you did a lot of kind of like analysis on age demographics and that kind of thing, particularly comparing us to like the successful teams at the time and where we wanted that age group to be. So I haven't gone anywhere near those details, but I've picked out a bit of a group of players that I kind of see as having the most impact on us this season. And so I want to do a little exercise with you.
I love this so much.
We'll see how badly this could possibly go. So I'm not including guys like Sauce, Haynes, and Doherty in this because they didn't have any impact last season. So they're a bit neutral. And then just for the sake of this argument, let's just forget about guys like Newman and Kennedy and Owens. I know Newman was a really, really impactful part of last year, but let's just hope that what we get from Sauce and Haynes kind of counteracts it.
Yeah.
If we can agree, just for the sake of for this argument. So I've picked out, how many have we got? The 19 players that I think, apart from them, will have the most impact on us this season. And I want you to give me your gut feel, whether you think that we're going to get a better output from them this year, worse, or the same.
Cool.
And we'll see how aligned we are. So we'll speed through them, but let's see how aligned we are. So Lord.
This is a hard one because it's probably
we
didn't see anything. No, we didn't see anything, so I don't know. But I'm going to say improved because I expect him to be good. So improved.
Cowan.
Improved, even though it was already
PDK.
Good. Improve.
Motlop.
Improve.
Chera.
Improve.
Walsh.
Ooh. It's either improve or stay the same.
Okay.
I think we're hoping he stays more healthy and getting closer to that almost Brownlow year. So, yeah, improve.
Okay, so Ollie Hollands.
Ooh, I think neutral at this stage. New role. There's a chance he could decline in it. So I'll say neutral.
Kemp.
Neutral.
Elijah Hollands.
I don't know if he's best 22. Elijah, I would have said improved. Now I'm concerned, but I think, yeah, I've backed him in to take that next step. So I'm going to stay with it.
And Williams.
Can I say neutral, but plays more games? So is that, yeah. Because I think his output in the forward line is what we're going to get. Hopefully just plays more games.
Okay, valid. And then we'll get to a bit more of an established bunch. So Wiedering.
Same as good.
Yeah. Me too. Cripps.
Or I think you're going to get a slight regression, but not like a big thing. But can he be best season Crip has ever had? I think it's going to be like 2% less.
I agree. I agree with that. Harry.
Ooh, neutral. I think he was good last year.
Akers.
Neutral. I think he sort of hit his cap. Sard, weirdly, I'm hoping a little bit of an uptick.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's one that you're more bullish on than me, which is good. Charlie. Just got 4 to go.
Neutral.
Yep. Fogg.
Neutral.
Hewitt.
Neutral.
And McGovern.
Neutral. I feel like a lot of these guys that I'm saying neutral for have, like, they've hit their ceiling of like, I'm a good player. This is what I am. I don't know if we're going to get an improvement on that. It's not like, I feel like when I say neutral, it makes me feel like I don't think their base is already good. So I just wanted to.
No, it doesn't.
Hopefully,
at all. I don't think
my answers have worked for what your argument is.
I don't think that. I don't think of it that way at all. I think saying the same as a good player is a good thing.
Yeah.
In this grand scheme. So we've done the same thing in that out of those 19 players, we both had one guy that we think will get less of, like a less impact this season than we did last year. For you, it was Cripps. For me, I've got it as McGovern. So if that's true, like if we're reflecting on this season and that is what happens, I know this is just us being optimistic and all of that, but we're basically saying about a third to half of that group will get better. About half will stay the same, and maybe one guy gets worse. How is that? How is that not a far better team this season?
No, I love that. I love that argument because I think that's something in the off season, particularly. Every team goes, well, how do we improve on next season? What is that? And we didn't really bring in a lot of talent necessarily. Haynes came in, Jagger Smith, who unfortunately we won't be able to see play this season. That was kind of it. Like, yes, we're going to be seeing Lucas, which is lovely, but we didn't expect, I guess, those guys to have much of an impact this year. So it was, where was the improvement coming from? And I think when you've got somewhat of an established group, that can be the negative headspace that you live in is, well, I'm looking at this team that's just brought in 2 guns. Where are our 2 guns? That means we're not going to improve. So I love that you've actually tried to go through this and gone through those individual players, because I think there's a lot of upside still in the players we have in this list. And I thought you were just simply going to talk about those guys that maybe haven't taken that step yet, like your Motlops and, I mean, they kind of have, but like Cowans, those kind of age group players that you're hoping to become really good players. I didn't even expect you to talk about guys like Chera, Walsh, that you could still get heaps more out of. And when you make those arguments, it's hard not to be very optimistic about the improvement across the board.
And I appreciate that. And that kind of goes to the broader media discussion around, I know that they're giving them lots of drive-bys this episode, but everyone's so excited about those few recruits that Collingwood made. And when you look at their list, and I think how a lot of these players performed last year, where I see them as being that where they overperformed even last year in a poor season, which a lot of disagree with me with. I think there's a lot more guys where if we did an analysis like this, you'd say, yeah, you're probably thinking they're going to get worse. That player, that player, that player. So it kind of, that's the imbalance. So you're right. We don't necessarily have the bright, shiny new toys this year, but we're hoping that a third of these guys that are going to have the most impact will be better than last year.
I guess arguing for my side of this, Lockie, is it a bad thing that a lot of what we're hoping improves is just that? It's hoping that these guys come on, that we get that step. How much of that trying to take the lens off that we are naturally going to have, do you think is realistic for us right now, that we're going to get this uptick in these guys? What are the issues on some of them that you think maybe we're just being optimistic because we're Carlton supporters and we want it to happen, versus someone who has no, I guess, skin in the game, thinking, well, maybe Chero won't be any better this year because his history has shown that he hasn't taken that step? Where do you kind of balance that when trying to be optimistic about this all?
It's a really great point. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier again about the mainstream media or comments that people make, and you see people make comments about Motlop and how he's no good, and people that aren't Carlton people. But if they're not Carlton people, then why do we kind of take their opinions anyway? So I'll take that part of it out of it. And if we just talk about us, yeah. I mean, when you look at all those guys that we put in the to get better category, I think it would be unlikely that all of them do, just by the law of averages. I think that is fair to say. But there's always then the players that were put in that same category, which can get better. Like we didn't expect Cripper to have his best season of all time going into this season, into 2024. So who knows who it might be in that mix. Like I said, I put Sard as a stay the same and you put better. Maybe he gets back to All-Australian Sard this year with a bit of a different backline and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a good rebuttal to this. And then injuries is part of this mix as well. This is assuming that all of these guys are, play a full season, which is always a consideration.
Crazy question for you. If no one improves, no one necessarily regresses, but it all stays the same, do you think we will, as a team, and so my improve is maybe top 4, neutral is still play finals, the negative is miss finals. If no one necessarily improves in this list, and we take that, because again, we're kind of hoping it happens in this sense, if it stays the same, do you think there's enough that you've seen that it improves, stays the same, or regresses?
Oh, my God.
There could be other external factors that you think are going to help us. Like we have Nick Haynes, we have, you know what I mean? So you can look at it multiple ways.
Yeah, that's exactly why my gut says just sit on that fence, Lock. Because, yeah, there's just too many other, if we take out that variable, which I'm hoping per this debate is one of the key things to be optimistic. If you take that out, then yeah, it makes all the other variables a lot harder to control.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Well, you've been positive about the personnel. I'm about to tear it apart, Lockie. This is the pessimistic Ian, pessimistic hat on. So I'm going to talk about small forwards are the future, Lockie.
Oh, here we go.
Now, I want to take a bit of a look at basically our forward line outside of Harry and Charlie, which, for the sake of argument, clearly they're massive assets that not many other teams have, and taking them away can be seen as unfair in an argument like this. But I hope you sort of come along with the ride and understand what I'm trying to argue. So
let's do it.
The AFL is changing, and I think we've seen a bit of a big shift in almost one of those most crucial components becoming the ultimate winners in September is the importance of not only the small forwards, but those dynamic, hard-working, hard-running, high half forwards that could potentially pinch it in the midfield. Now, our team has been called slow a lot. That has been a narrative that has gone with pretty much just comes from our strong contested midfield and our big 2 key forwards in that forward line. Now, Having these guys clearly massive positive, massive advantage for us. But it's about, if we want to be that big team, if we want to improve, it's about getting the right mix around them to get the most out of the pieces that we have. Over recent seasons, I think the best teams have had an array of these kind of players that I'm talking about. Fast, dynamic, skillful, game-breaking, half forwards, mid forwards, small forwards. I'm talking Rayner, Bailey, Bolton, Papley, Green, Bobby Hill, Nick Watson, those kind of players. They have a few different roles, but that's what I'm talking about. So most of these teams also kind of have a dynamic player or two of them in their midfield as well, on top of these forward talents. I think that's probably the one thing we maybe don't have, or you could argue we don't have with Cripps, Hewitt, Chera, and Walsh. I think Walsh, fully healthy, can be that dynamic player. Chera could also be as well. I think he's got the movement, but I think we're still maybe missing one. Is that Jagger Smith? It could have been, but we can't see him this year, which makes the importance for me of having the balance around the midfield and the forwards such a huge thing for us, getting that pace, getting that movement. So I want to take you through a few of the teams, a lot of the teams that are kind of competing for the top 8, Lockie, and those watching and listening with us. And I want to bring these to you, and you have to tell me whether our forward line is better or worse than these teams. If I've missed out any players, if you disagree that they're in this category, let me know. It's hard because sometimes there's like a medium forward that could be in this, couldn't. I tried to take out those players, but we can have that argument. So
I'm going to try really hard to be unbiased.
Yes, I'll read you my Carlton list. If you need me to go back through it again at any stage, let me know. If you want anyone else in this, also let me know. I have Elijah Hollins. I have Matt Cottrell. I have Lockie Fogarty, Orazio Fantasia, Zach Williams, and Jesse Motlop. I tried to take probably our best, most dynamic bunch that I think you were to pick a team. These are the guys that are most likely there. Better or worse than any of these teams, and maybe you can talk about what these other teams have. We'll start with probably the best in Brisbane. Cam Rayner, Zach Bailey, Calamachi, Charlie Cameron, Kai Lohman.
Yeah, it's not a debate.
Yes. And I think seeing the last team that won the premiership, and you see the kind of forward line they have mixed with the 3 talls, knowing their midfield's probably a slightly bit more dynamic than ours, that seems to be the bar. When I look at us, I want a bit of that. Can we manufacture it? But yes, I agree. Brisbane is better. Now, Sydney don't have a lot of these, I guess you'd say, traditional players in these positions. I think that's because they have probably the most dynamic midfield in the comp with Heaney, Goulden, Warner, who can all hit the scoreboard. So I've incorporated a couple of them. Let me know if you disagree with their incorporation. But Isaac Heaney, because he can go forward and be that player. Errol Goulden, because he's a bit more of that winger. High half forward, can play that role. And then Jason Jordan, Tom Papley, Sam Wicks. How do you think we compare to Sydney? Because they also play with a lot of tall forwards. Do you think as a mix we're better because maybe Heaney and Goulden don't count? Where do you see that?
Yeah, I think the bottom end of that list, like if you compare just Sydney and Brisbane, like Brisbane, it's very high end quality all the way through there, whereas Sydney, it's a big divide, I'd say. But the top end talent of the Sydney guys is not comparable to us.
I agree. GWS, Brent Daniels, Toby Bedford, Darcy Jones, Toby Green.
Yeah, I mean, just watching that game 2 hours ago, it's not really a debate either.
Hawthorn, we've got Dylan Moore, Connor McDonald, Nick Watson, Jack Ginnivan.
Yeah. You kind of have to say that the Hawks have better runs on the board, at least for that stretch of last year.
Yes, I agree. Now, Geelong, Brian Myers, Ollie Dempsey, Brad Close, Jack Martin, and Tyson Stengel.
Yeah, they definitely have the runs on the board over our group.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best in the comp. Freo, they have Bolton, they've got Frederick, Banfield, Walters, and Switkowski.
Yeah, well, I think this is the closest so far. Yeah, I think you'd have to probably go one by one through some of these guys. Like Bolton is the most talented player in that whole group. Yeah, I'll give you Freo though.
So you'll say Freo's better? Because this is a tough one I find as well, because I think it feels very similar in the sense of none of them are really outstanding right now, except Bolton. And we don't have that. Are some of our other players potentially better than them? So how much do you outweigh them having the star, us not having a star? That's kind of the question I threw out.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that that's important. Like that's what we want from one of these 6 guys that you named. Like who's going to be that player from the 6 of us that is going to properly take it to the next level, because none of them have yet, and they still can, particularly Elijah and Jesse. But yeah, I think a lot of those Freo names, apart from Bolton, would be pretty reasonably transferable. I think, like if you put one of them in our team or one of our guys into one of them, it'd be pretty similar output.
Okay,
which is why I'd say I'd give it to them.
Yeah,
because Bolton would immediately be the third, at least the third best forward in our forward line, like behind Harry and Charlie. And some people argue that someone like him is more important.
Agreed. Okay, Collingwood, Jamie Elliott, Bo McCreary. I guess you could throw Will Hoskin-Elliott as a guy that can kind of play midfield as well. Feel free to kick him out if you don't like him. Bobby Hill and Lachie Schultz.
Oh, gee whiz. I mean, is Bobby Hill the best player if you take both of those cohorts, would you say?
Yes.
So I keep getting swayed by that, I guess, because I think the average kind of player of this archetype are all very similar. So when there's that guy that stands out, and yeah, Bobby Hill would be the first guy picked out of this list. So yeah.
Who would your second choice be? If you got to schoolyard play a game this season, you got to pick your teams. Who's number 2?
Wow. Because
I'd have probably Jamie Elliott still.
Yeah, my mind immediately went to him too.
And then I'd potentially still have Lachie Schultz. I know he's been horrific for Collingwood, but he was very good. He did more at Freo than I think any of our forward lines currently showed.
Yeah, I mean that's the part I'm trying to take out of this is that the potential that we're hoping to see from Motlop this year. If we literally look at what we've gotten last year, yeah.
That's a loss again. Port Adelaide, thrown Horn Francis into this because he does spend a lot of time up there. You can kick him out if you disagree.
No.
Sam Powell-Pepper, Darcy Byrne-Jones, Joe Richards, Willie Rioli, and new recruit Joe Berry in the draft.
Yeah, well, I think this is the new contender for the closest. I think, there's plenty of guys in here that I'd rather over a rookie Berry, Joe Richards, Willie Rioli, very, very up and down. Yeah, I'd tie this one. But again, Horn Francis is by far the best player in this group.
Yeah. I think if we had a midfielder that could do what he did, if you take Horn Francis out of this, I think similar to Freo, where they've got the better one player in Rioli, but I kind of prefer our mix a lot more with everything else. Horn Francis is that maybe mold, showing that we have that player. So we can happily call that a tie if you want.
Let's tie that.
Next one, Doggies. Riley West, Laith Vandermeer, Lachie McNeil, Cody Waitman. They do not have a lot of smalls that I could really jot down here. Feels like they've got a lot of talls in their forward line, but that's who we've got.
Yeah, no, I think I would take our group over theirs.
I think overall, like again, Cody Waitman's better, but I don't think they've got a lot. So that is our first win. That is our first win. If you think, I think we've tied Port, so we've got a win. Melbourne, we've got Tom Sparrow, Cade Chandler, Harvey Langford, who recently got drafted mid forward, Colton Tholstrup, and Cozzy Pickett.
Oh God, it is really hard to compare these just on this level. So is Pickett the best player if you take both those groups?
Yes, but is the rest of ours, does that outweigh what they have? I feel like we're more dynamic than Melbourne.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I'm trying to be as really unbiased as possible, and I would say us.
Yes. Okay. And Adelaide is the last one. Sorry, Gold Coast.
Okay.
I haven't got you in this list. If someone wants to contend, go for it. Ben Keys, who still gives me nightmares. Alex Neil-Bullen, Lachlan Murphy, thrown Luke Pedler in there for an extra name. Josh Richelli and Isaac Rankin.
Yeah. You keep putting the best player last. It's annoying.
Get you excited. But yeah, so I guess after going through that, I was trying to make the point of just how integral I think these kind of players are to how teams play in this day and age, and that feels like every team has one or two of these guys in their team. They've got at least one gun small forward, one gun high half forward that can go into the midfield, that's got a bit of dynamic movement and pace around the ball. Currently, we just don't have that. It's all, will Jesse Motlop become that guy? Can Zach Williams stay fit? Maybe Orazio can turn back the clock. Maybe Elijah Hollands can stay consistent and do what he did last year. Can Matty Cottrell be that role player? It just doesn't seem to be nailed on like these other teams. And I think when the game is evolving and we're seeing these guys highlighted, we've got the tools in the forward line, but when the ball hits the ground, when the ball is moving so fast right now, you need to be able to win it. And with teams like Brisbane, Geelong, GWS, who I have as kind of like my top three teams going into this season.
Yeah.
I look at their forward lines and I just don't think it's comparable with the supporting cast. And their midfield, maybe, I guess, Geelong not as much, but their midfield also feels more dynamic. I think this is an important part of the game that we're not addressing or not getting on board to just yet. The importance of those smalls, the half forwards, because if we want to get the most out of our midfield, it feels like a fit and firing De Koning, who is a completely different ruckman, elevates that midfield. So how else can we get that happening? Because we've got the spine. Do we need the wingers to add more to the game, the forwards to add more? The speed needs to come from elsewhere because it's not the midfield. I'm just worried we don't have that right now. And if it comes down to those teams, like we've seen, we've tied with Port, we've maybe tied with Freo. Dogs and Melbourne are our only wins, and it wasn't a easy 100% 10 out of 10 victory. I think that's a somewhat cause for concern until that's addressed.
Yeah. Yep. We need an always type, I think is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely not, Lockie.
Well, just to go back to my previous argument, you did have two of these players in your better. We expect them to be better this year. So I think that's a cause for optimism. I didn't even include Cottrell and Fantasia in my list of 20 players I think will have the most impact. So let's hope that I don't want to use that word hope, but if we get that, you know. And also, let's go back to your predictions episode. Oh, what was the prediction again? Would you mind just repeating closely into the mic what you're predicting from the small forwards?
You put me on the spot, expecting me to remember it all. It was definitely 100 goals, I'm pretty sure. Or it was it was 80 to 100 goals. Can't remember the specifics. Of
contradicting
Elijah
yourself
Hollands, Motlop, Zach Williams, and there might have been another player, but I can't think of who it was. But I went big on these smalls, having a big year. And again, it could happen. Like, this is the thing. But I guess what I really wanted to highlight here, rather than trying to win a debate, was just the more I've spent time and energy looking into this area of the field, I think I've realized how important it is for teams to win and why maybe our connection hasn't been there in the front half. When you look at the names we've had rolling around in these roles over the last 3 or 4 years, compared to the other teams that seem to have one or two guns and then a complementary role players. Like, we love what Cottrell can bring. He's that role player that can kind of be that running half forward. Hollands is one we hope can kind of take that next step and be a bit more than that. Motlop, again, be that number one small forward. We saw Williams, when he's fit, he can be a player in there. He looked really good in preseason, looked to be running well. Can he push higher up the ground? Fantasia's got runs on the board in his past. We just haven't seen it yet. But I think regardless of whether you're optimistic on whether it will work or pessimistic thinking it won't work, I think regardless, this is an area that I see as a real growth for us and where the league is definitely heading with the fast movement. I look at GWS and Brisbane and I'm jealous with the kinds of players they have. Ball there to be won. Who's got the speed? That kind of worries me with Carlton right now.
Yeah. No, it's a well-made point. Good job with number 2. Shall I give you my final?
Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
All right. Maybe it's a little bit of a speculative one, but we'll see if you buy it or not. So I'm going to talk fixture.
Oh, I was not expecting this. I love it already.
Okay. I thought you might. So the way that it seems that statisticians like to judge fixture difficulty is just about the teams that you play twice and how they did in the previous season.
Yeah. Which is not great.
But we'll take that, I guess, as for the purpose of this discussion. So we had the 11th easiest last year, and that's going to go up to the 7th this year.
Ooh.
So that's positive. So let's have a look at the teams that we're going to play twice and tell me whether you feel good about. Just give me like I'm glad we're playing them twice, or I wish we weren't playing them twice. West Coast.
Very happy.
North.
Not as happy, but still happy.
Yep. Valid. We'll see how they go. Essendon.
It's definitely better than it is bad.
I agree. Collingwood.
I'm glad we're playing them twice, but it's not for, I guess, performance reasons. That one's a tough one.
Yeah, I agree. And then Port and Hawthorn are the last 2 that we play all together, that we play twice.
I like the Port one because we get a game here.
Don't
mind it.
So I went back to our season preview and I was like, where did I put these teams as where I think that they're going to finish this season? So I had them as not in any order, but 6th and 8th, 11th, 14th, 15th, 17th.
Yep.
And you only had one of these teams in your top 8 when we did that, and that was Hawthorn. So if I put this hypothetical out there, and this is probably the hypothetical that you could most shut down, but I know you like doing kind of looking ahead at fixtures and predicting how we could go. Do you think it would be unreasonable to say that we beat 4 of those teams both times and split 2 of them? Have a look at if you've written those.
Name me them all again. We've got West Coast, North, Essendon, Collingwood, Port.
And Hawthorn.
Yep. And Hawthorn. And what was the question you were after there? Sorry.
Would it be reasonable for us to predict that 4 of those teams, we beat them both times, and then we split the other 2?
I had 3 teams that we would beat twice and 3 that we could split. I had us splitting Collingwood, Port, and Hawthorn and beating Essendon, North, and West Coast twice. That was me, but in the realm of things, I could definitely see us beating Port twice or beating Collingwood twice. I could see it happening.
I like it. I can work that into my numbers. So that means that we would be 9-3 against the teams that we play twice, which means the remaining games that we have, so there's 11 more games to be played. 13 wins we had last year. So we'd have to go 5-6 against those last 11 teams to have a better record than last year.
Yeah, that wouldn't be an ideal. 5-6 from that would probably be a disaster. I'd expect
right.
Yeah.
I would think the same. So yeah, I guess that's my kind of contention is that I'm just reading my notes here to see if there's any other bangers that I wrote down.
Well, did you want to go through all those teams right now that we didn't mention and we go win-loss?
We could. Okay. Well, it's hard because I don't have written down where the game is.
I see. That makes sense.
But we can rapid fire it if you want to be agnostic of the location.
I absolutely love what you're doing with this. And I think regardless, finish your spiel, and then I reckon I'll get the full fixture up,
let's do that.
and then we'll do it for a bit of fun.
Let's do it. Well, that was basically my whole point, was that because the margins are so tight within the top 10 teams, like I said before, the difference between third and I think it was 14th being 4 wins, I don't think we should underestimate that a more favourable fixture could actually just be the reason for an extra 2 wins, even if all else stays the same. An extra couple of wins, and we would have been in the top 4.
Yeah, it's massive. I think that's a big reason to be optimistic that the teams that we play twice, we believe will be better than and get more wins, and just something as silly as the fixture, which I always take for granted. I don't really look at it ever and compare it to other years. I just sort of take it at face value, and this is who we're playing. Let's go. Let's win these games. But we expect to be better in season anyway. And then when you see that written down, it does make you up and about for what could happen this season. So you've got the tally. I believe it was 9-3 from that. Let me run through these. Feel free to keep doing the maths, because you definitely don't want me on that train. We've got Richmond round 1 at the MCG. Yep. That's a win for us. We've got the Dogs at Marvel.
Yep. I'm feeling confident about that one, considering their injuries.
With their injuries, we should get the win. We've then got Geelong at the MCG.
Coin toss, I reckon.
Yeah. We'll give Geelong a win here just for a bit
Let's do it.
Argument. Adelaide away.
Ooh, yeah, I reckon we could pencil that as a loss.
St Kilda at the MCG. I'm giving us a dub because it's at the G. Sydney away, probably a loss. GWS at Marvel, I say win.
Me too.
We've now got Brisbane at home. Sorry, at Marvel. That's
yeah, gross. I'd be happy to put that as a loss.
Yeah, we can give that a loss
for us to be.
Yeah. Then we got Melbourne at the G. I'd say win. We've got Fremantle away.
We got the wood on them.
I reckon that's a win. I reckon.
I was going to say we've been very kind so far.
Yeah,
so let's give us a win.
Then we got Gold Coast at home.
They never win.
And that's all of them. How many wins is that, Lockie?
So that would be 7-4 from those, which would leave us 16-win season.
Yeah, wow. And there was a couple that, at the end, if we lose that Freo one, that's 15 wins. So this is looking very optimistic. There was still a couple that I was like, maybe do we have an upset? Do we lose to someone we shouldn't have? But that does make me excited about the amount of wins that.
Good. And
look, it's very easy to do the ladder predictor and assume you're going to win games, but if we're doing this right now, and I'm confident that I believe we're better than this team, and I feel like I've been realistic in, okay, they're a good opposition. That's got me up and about, Lockie. I hate that we now end on my pessimistic.
Yeah, we should have structured that better.
We really should have. Well, if you were happy from that, you're not going to be, because my last point on why you shouldn't be excited about the season is mentality. Now, this is hard to quantify, so you could easily disagree with this. But I think the best teams, the ones that go all the way, for lack of a better phrase, Lockie, they got that dog in them. And they need to want it more than anything else. And they need to be composed in the tough times, those tough moments. Carlton players' mentality, look, it's been questioned. It's pretty much since the beginning of this rebuild. Bolton sacking, Teague, missing finals in 22, sitting bottom 4 in 23. We've questioned this playing group and their mentality countless times. Now, again, maybe this is a poor argument, but I think we're not sure that these boys can handle these big moments. And I think if there is that worry inside you, you can't truly say we've got this mentality to win. I think externally and even internally, kind of seen as a team that can lose it from any position. Even last year, losing against the Saints, with all on the line, we hit the lead, we lost it from the unlosable position. From almost scoreless at halftime in an elimination final against Brisbane, go back a year, 5 goals up, quarter time in a prelim, lost. Of course, the dreaded end to 2022. In the 8th, the whole way, back half of the season, we just capitulated. For me, it's a worry that we still, when there's these big moments, we just don't seem to be able to take them, excuses or not. Even something as silly as just our inability to defend kick-ins or the high amount of scores from D50 stoppages that we concede. This is about being switched on and engaged. I think we just need to be better mentally regardless. And we've also often asked this question, do we need to be tougher? And that's not about tough in the contest. This is a team that ruffles the feathers of the opposition, a team that wants to be physical to back up their teammates or to get that little bit of an edge and impose themselves over the opposition. Sometimes we're too nice. We're a little bit too humble. Can you still be the best if that's your mentality, or do you have to have a bit of a nasty mean streak? That question for me right now is still out there. Now, I got to watch the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl this year, and this is kind of where it all stemmed from. We had to get that in there, but it's kind of where it all stemmed from me, because as soon as we won, obviously that's when you start to hear all these stories of this is what was said in the change room. This was the mentality going in, and every single thing that came out of the club was they weren't losing this game. They have all coaches, staff, players have even said, like, I've never seen everyone so locked in, so believing that they will win. Didn't matter who they were coming up against. This team had it done. Defense was saying, Kansas City aren't going to get a touchdown. Like, we're going to make this stop. And for a half of football, that basically happened. And I think when you're talking about being motivated, having this true belief that you're the best and knowing it, do you get that vibe from us? We often have to argue against the narrative on socials or in the media when a player gets interviewed, gets asked a question, and they maybe don't truly answer it and say, we want to win the flag, we're going to be the team. They give a bit of media spin. And we have to come out here and say, I don't think that's truly what's going on. Maybe, behind the four walls, I'm sure they want to win. That's all they want to do.
Yeah.
But that, I guess, is still just out there, Lockie. Until we see them do it, I guess I'm just not 100% convinced. And there is this little bit of doubt that is something holding them back mentally. Are they that team like the Eagles that are in that locker room that regardless of if it happens or not, they are so stoically standing there saying, we're winning it, doesn't matter, don't care, we're getting it done. And I'm not sure right now we have that, and that is what's being said inside the walls. Does that need to be said? Or am I wrong? Do you not need that mentality each and every single week? But I think right now,
it's a really good argument.
Until that's overcome, these boys just need to show that they don't slip up.
It is a very strong argument. Do you think, if that was going to be turned around, do you see that as being more like player group driven or like coaching and staffing driven?
I'm going to say potentially the worst answer to this. I think it's something you have or you don't.
But is that, so then my question to that would be, is that about the how do I frame this? If this same this is a dumb question. If these same players and these same coaches was the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah.
Like, is it a Carlton thing?
Are you cultivating it inside?
Like, is it like, you know what I mean? Like, is it the specific people or is it the who Carlton is?
Yeah, it's probably both. It's probably the culture being told to them. A lot of it is about being humble. And again, it's weird with the rhetorics that you sometimes hear, because that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think sometimes maybe a group needs that to not get ahead of themselves, to stay in the moment, to stay present, stay very psychologically healthy. And that's what I hear often from Carlton. It's all these really good mental things that I'm like, oh, you need that. But I guess the one thing I don't sometimes see, and maybe they just don't allow you to see it, is that, and I hate the phrase, but it's like that dog in him, that thing that is just I'm ready to go. We're the best. I don't care. And maybe they have that. Maybe they say that internally. But like we've often said, they don't go out and publicly say that because they just don't need to. And it's them inside. Like, I didn't necessarily hear from the Philadelphia Eagles that much throughout the season, them walking around saying, we're the best team in this thing, we're going to win. That was potentially just an internal thing that they believed. I think it more for me just stems from when I look at these boys, are they the personification of what I believe that looks like? And it's not. But maybe what I perceive that is not valid, which goes back to that being that imposing thing on the field, being that dominant physical presence. Maybe that's just not them, and that's not a type of winners. Because I don't know if Brisbane were that kind of team, and they went on to win it. But it's interesting.
But you would look at, I not to put words in your mouth, but I think you would look at players at Brisbane and describe them in that way, maybe more than you would specific Carlton players.
I think so. There's definitely a few that are coming to mind that
Me too.
I think when I'm looking at this Carlton team, there's not a lot that I like. They're talented, but how many of them do I see on the field if there's a big moment are willing to just stand up to another Carlton teammate, point the finger, give them a rev up, give them anything, shout some instructions, tell them that that's not the standard. I don't know. I don't see a lot of that.
Well, seeing as you've, I don't really disagree. I think a lot of that they're good points. But I'm going to ask you one fiery question, put you under the pump.
Do it.
If that's the contention of this, give me 3 players that would have the most impact that you want to see more of that in.
Or more of that in.
Yes, the other way. Like, who are the players that's missing from?
Harry. He's got so much, but he just seems slightly too mild-mannered at times. I want to see that man up and a bloody bout. Ooh.
That's a good example.
Weirdly, I feel like Wiedering has it, but I want to see more.
Yep.
I want to see him really be a little bit more. De Koning. Haven't seen that side of him, I guess.
3 Bolton boys.
Yeah. But like, I mean, this is the interesting component of this debate where some of these points I don't truly believe 100%. Like the mentality component, I don't 100% agree with the point I'm arguing, but I think it's a good thing to bring to the table and have the discussion around.
Me too.
Because when we were sitting second, when we beaten Geelong and had that thing, I was not thinking these boys don't have the mental determination. It was more just a reflection, particularly after the Super Bowl, where I was seeing these little things, seeing little clips of how some people have show off their mentality and what it means to them. And I'm like, that doesn't translate to us. Now, again, that doesn't mean by any stretch that we can't be successful, because everyone shows it in different ways. But if people are going to look pessimistically at this season, I think that St Kilda loss is really going to ring in their ears of just, you spoke about the injuries and that's fine, but we had the win. And yet again, we found a way to cough it up. And it's going to happen at times. You're going to bottle games.
Yeah.
But I'm sick of us bottling the one that matters. Feels like we do that too often. But these boys can turn around this season.
They can. I think you picked 3 really good topics for if you were going to have a pessimistic view, why that may be. So good job.
Mate, you absolutely nailed it.
What a good,
let us know what you
debate.
thought. Let me know what you thought of the Blue debate. If you ever want to see it, come back. If you liked it, drop it in the comments. Give your thoughts to it all. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are those reasons valid? We are very interested to know your thoughts through everything in this episode. But let's gear back towards Richmond. We've still got a little bit to go in this episode. Let's talk about team selection. Now, we know Lucas and Nick Haynes are slated for debuts. It's been announced, but Lockie, give me the rest of your team.
Oh, God. Just go ahead and give you the whole team. I mean, there's nothing... I don't think there's anything groundbreaking in mind. You want me
I
to go
think
through
we're
the whole
going to
thing,
have
though?
I think we're going to have the exact same team, maybe bar the sub difference. So go through
Cool.
it and then we
All
can
right.
discuss.
Let's see. So Cowan, Wiedering, Haynes, Hollands, McGovern, Sard, and Silvani.
Yep. Exact same for me.
Akers, Cripps, Camporelli.
Yep.
With TDK, Hewitt, Chera, Walsh, and Lord.
Yep. Same for me.
Harry and Brody.
Yep.
Elijah Hollands, Motlop, Fogarty, Williams, Cottrell.
So you don't have Doherty in that 23. You have Elijah. No. Okay. That's the only difference. I have Doherty as my sub. I don't have Elijah Hollands in the team. I want Elijah Hollands in my team, but I haven't seen him, and so I don't think they'll play him. And I think I was looking at, for me, it was who was going to be the sub out of those two, and I'm probably just being swayed by what I think will happen over what I want, because I actually want to see a forward line that doesn't have Elijah Hollands, considering how well it worked against GWS for a bit. So I probably would have had him on as the sub. But yeah, very, very similar. Drop your teams if you're watching on YouTube in the comments below. I like that.
There's one player
I don't mind that.
Missing there.
Yeah, he's in my starting team.
Oh, he's in your starting, Fantasia.
Yeah.
I think, I hope, I mean, we're always balancing what we predict and what we hope. My gut says that, my gut's just telling me that Doc's not going to play in this game. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a guy that just needs a bit of football under his belt, and then he should hopefully be fine. Just a bit of ring rust, coming back from a big injury. I mean, I wonder how much what he did just to get right last season is almost like slightly catching up to him in a way. Not that he has any long-lasting damage because he did anything risky, but when you come back from an injury so quickly and just to play like one game of football and then you kind of back on ice a little bit, what does that do to you? The mentality of trying to come back for a flag, that doesn't happen. Feel like he just needs a bit of a run and playing games. So maybe that works better than him being the sub like I have. But I think I had Fantasia in there for that speed and ball use and that dynamic edge that I was talking about earlier in the debate. Feel like I liked that mix against GWS. So let's roll it back. Let's have a look at it. Are there any other people that you think are stiff to miss, that you think are in contention? Where did you see all of that going?
Yeah, good question. I guess there's Moya is probably in contention, but we didn't really see that much of him in the preseason, so I'd find that unlikely. Binns as well is another one that comes to mind. Who I'd be really, I'd be shocked if he was in this team with who we have available.
And then I think the other one was Boyd, but I don't know if he's 100% good to go or not. The fact we haven't seen him makes me believe he'd be behind others in the pecking order. And while Ollie Hollands is slated to be down there, probably hard to get a run. But weirdly, is it a good thing or a bad thing that there aren't a lot of names that are in contention that are missing out?
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting question. Like I feel really confident with all the guys that we've named, except Fantasia, I guess. Like, he had a good game against the Giants, but I'm optimistic of what he can be like this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here next week saying that he was our least impactful player.
Yeah. No, I thought it was interesting when I was making the team going, I feel like that was really easy. Who have I missed? And then I couldn't find a lot of names to bring in. And then I thought, oh no, is this a worry that maybe the depth isn't as good as I maybe thought? But I think we do have a couple of, people maybe not 100% that we haven't seen a lot of football from, but all those that kind of aren't in contention just need to play some VFL and get the form in. And then who knows? Like, we didn't expect Lucas Camporelli to be ready to go this early. So who knows who else is sitting there on the wing. So let's talk about it a little bit. True. What did you make of the news of Lucas being named to debut?
Yeah, well, I did have him in my predicted team before that announcement. So yeah, I think it makes sense that they're rewarding him for that.
Mm.
Really strong preseason. So yeah, I'm excited. I think this is a good stage for him to be thrown into, the
Mm.
spotlight in round 1 against Richmond. I'm glad they're doing it in this way.
Yeah, and he definitely earned it after his
Yeah.
preseason performances. It's just so great to see. Love it a lot. Hope he
Yeah.
dominates. Question about the midfield I had, though. We've both got Cripple Lord in there, but
Yeah.
we're very quick to when Jagger Smith got injured say, okay, Cooper's straight in. I guess knowing that Jagger was more of a half forward mid role, little bit of a different player, not as inside, adds other elements is what we were hoping, a bit of burst, bit of step. Because they're not exactly the same player, what does that midfield mix look like for you? And we've both named Lord, but is he as locked on as maybe we think he is, given that he's not the exact same player that we're replacing?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. And maybe the Doherty part is an element of that. Like what do you predict? Like, you're predicting that Doherty will play. Where's he looking to play? Like, is he going to be running off half forward? Is he going to be in CBAs?
I think he'd be, if he does play, he'd be wing and some CBAs.
Wing and some
Not
CBAs.
necessarily
Yeah,
what
okay.
I'd do. I think I just more have him wing.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. It feels really right, just like the Cripps, Hewitt, Chero, Walsh, Lord kind of core of 5. It just feels right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm expecting. I'd be pretty surprised if he played, much time out of CBAs. I would say, like, we'll see what we get from. We've only kind of seen him in that role, really, like as being an important part of that midfield last year when we needed him.
He sort of just takes over what we saw Kennedy do for us in the midfield, which I think is a role that clearly can be used. Do you think it's been a big topic I've spoken about, but we saw guys like Williams and guys like Motlop in preseason attend a few CBAs and get a little run in the midfield. Do you think something like that will be tried in season? And I guess, is there anyone else that you potentially throw in there?
I always like that, but I feel like we don't see it that much with Carlton. I'm going to say I'm not going to talk about the whole season. If I talk about this game, I'm going to guess that no, we don't see either of them in the CBAs. My guess.
I reckon we'll see a couple. I think they might take over the. Hollands might have had 1 or 2 a game. Same with Fogarty. They'd throw those 2 in. I'm hoping that the idea is Williams and Motlop to be a bit more dynamic and add a bit more movement around.
I would love that.
Roam with them. So it might not be for a long period of time. Might be 2 minutes, but it would be something I'd love to see just to change things up a little bit. Question on Walsh. Bit of speculation on him. Do you think he will play? Or given we don't maybe think this is a crucial game, I think the margin will be in our favor. Would you give Walsh an extra week?
Ugh, I hate this topic. I think he will play. Listening to a bit of his radio interview, it sounded like he was going to be good to go. Yeah, it's the same old story with me on this. Like, just got to trust the staff. If they're not 100%, then of course not. Of course, don't risk him. But from all accounts, it sounds like he's ready to go. So I think if he's ready and he's one of our best players, let's do it. And you know what? Best case scenario, sub him at 3/4 time when we're up by 60 and put him on ice.
No, I think if he's good to go, why not? Let him get a bit of touch. And again, it feels disrespectful in a way to say this, but like, is it better to give him some match time against Richmond before a big game against Hawthorn, or bring him straight in, no preseason games, straight in against Hawthorn? I feel like I'd like him to get up to scratch a little bit there. And then I guess finally, Charlie been ruled out of this one, says ideal for round 2. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Should we be starting to get a little bit worried that Charlie keeps kind of getting pushed back and they do that typical thing where they announce that he's maybe missing a little bit extra time and then bang, here's the good news, boys. Lucas is playing this week to sort of soften the blow that I feel like everyone's cotton on to them giving you a bit of bad news, bit of good news at the same time, or are we all just got our tinfoil hats on too much, Lockie?
Weren't they saying round 1 or 2 like 6 weeks ago? I feel like hasn't that been? I feel like that's been the consistent narrative since it went down. So I'm not surprised, and I'm not offended by that at all.
Yeah, look, I'd
be surprised if others are.
I've got more things to worry about right now. Just if it takes him a little bit longer,
just in your own life or Carlton related.
Oh, I think in general, like he's going to be fine. That made it really sound like I've got some concerning things going on, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
I've got
really
bigger things to worry. Why are we doing this podcast? I've got bigger shit to worry about than Carlton.
No, but I think right now my focus is on winning games of football, doing all of that. With Charlie, obviously he's a massive component of our list and what we want to do, but let's get him right. It's a long season. We want to be peaking later in the year, heading into finals, having that stretch. If that means Charlie doesn't play until round 4 or 5 and gets his body perfect, then so be it. If the club don't give us all the 100% information, but eventually Charlie's healthy, whatever. I'm not going to be sitting here getting too angry at the injury reports, touch wood, for hopefully a little while this season. Just get Charlie right.
Carlton fans dealt big blow as Charlie Curnow ruled out of season opener. God. Get this media away.
Well, last thing we'll end with, it's been a big episode to get back this year. We're going to just do something that we'll do every month or so, where we will be predicting our next run of fixtures so we can look back on it, get a bit of a gauge of where we're at, how tough is that next stretch of games, which I think is good. Finding out what the pass mark is, because then if we lose a few more games, we'll have to make them up elsewhere. So we've got Richmond, Hawthorn, and the Dogs to start this season, Lockie. What's the pass mark after those 3 games?
3-1.
3-1 from 3 games. My goodness.
Oh, wait. We're not including Collingwood.
3 games, buddy.
Well, that makes it a little trickier because I was thinking about it in that way. Because I feel like it feels weird saying 2-1. I guess my reasoning is that I think that we're going to have a comfortable win in this game. And I think it's going to be a competitive loss against Hawthorn and a competitive win against the Bulldogs is how I think it's going to play out.
Yeah, apologies. I was trying to get us smoothly to the bye, and I found that if I did 3 this week and then 4 games for the rest of the season, we're beautiful, and we've got it perfectly from the bye even. So I've kind of stitched you up there.
Right.
But
thanks.
I agree. I think worst case scenario, I'd be fine with 2 wins, 1 loss. 3 is the ideal scenario, and we're flying. If we happen to lose 1 there, we can make that up. I think
agreed.
Hawks are a good team. Dogs can be on their day. They've got injuries right now, so I back us in to win that. But if we beat the Hawks and lose to the Dogs, you'll cop a loss. But I'm very interested to look back in this in 3 weeks and see how we are, and then transition throughout the rest of the year. Drop your predictions down in the comments on YouTube. Let us know what you thought of everything on the socials at Navy Blue Corner. Links are in the description, in the show notes. Lockie, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we say goodbye, before our first game of the 2025 season?
Will you be in attendance, flying the flag for the podcast?
Unfortunately,
unbelievable.
I will not
unbelievable.
be, which makes me sound like an awful fan, but it is a great opportunity for me to go over and spend some time with the grandparents and kick the season off. So we'll have the big Brownie household all there for a bit of a family moment instead, Lockie. So you can't get too angry at me.
No. That's beautiful. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I was going to end on a big rant, but the episode's gone way too long, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
but I'll leave you with this, because we normally have a bit of positivity to end these episodes, Lockie. And all I'll say is, it's the start of the season. We've just done a debate, positivity, negativity. Throw the negativity in the bin. This is the perfect time of the season. No games have been played. just to be positive, be optimistic, hope it's all going to go well, because this feeling doesn't last for too much longer. Eventually you have that loss, you start to feel upset. Footy's back. We've been dreaming of this for months. I'm up and about, very excited, and we'll be back to review a massive win against Richmond, a statement 100+ point victory. Up the bloody Baggers. See you guys next time.